This is Visions Under Construction, a chance for our guests to share their visions and tell us what they're working on. For their continued support, we'd like to thank Simwood.com, who can turn you as a developer into a telco. Why not make Cloudonics your communication partner? Go to cloudonics.io. You can find everything about the VUC at vuc.me, thanks to Bluehost, and thanks also to zipdx.com, the conference bridge, and to voxbone.com for local rate dial-ins. All right, I just want to mention that I am watching a couple of places for comments. We're all watching IRC, and I'm trying to watch the tag VUC727 on Pluspora. Also have David is with us on the phone. I'm going to call on him in a second. So we'll go with first names here. I have Andy, but Andy's not showing himself. Corrado, a regular's with us. Hey, Corrado. By the way, they can't see you, so let me go through this again. Corrado?
Yes. Hello.
Hank is with us, and Hank's a Diaspora denizen, has been for a little while. Hey, Hank.
Hello, how are you?
Good to see you. Keith Milner is kind of a semi-regular. Keith, you did something with your beard.
Yeah, I'm doing some, or I did some filming earlier in the week.
Okay.
They wanted me clean shaven, so.
They want you to be clean shaven. All right, before we get, I get it. Before we get going too much into the things, I just wanted to show everybody that there's my first post on Diaspora. So you can see 8 years ago on joindiaspora.com, and the statistics at that time were such, you could read them. Total users, 330,825. There's a kind of an interesting thing here because if, I'm hoping this is what I think it is. There we go. Pluspora. So I'm on that now. So I only have 3 accounts on Diaspora pods, on 3 pods. But what we can see, if you look at some of these statistics, is that there's actually a huge number comparatively of active users monthly on Pluspora. Very, very impressive. And the final thing was, let's see, what was the final thing? Oh, yeah, the final thing was that I asked about pronouncing, and I got 2 different opinions. So I asked a bunch of people all over the world how this is words pronounced, and this is what happened.
Diaspora.
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 So it seems to get longer with each language, right? The bora pretty soon to be diaspora.
You could have mixed those into a piece of music, sort of Jean-Michel Jarre style.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. There's some info, Hank. Thanks for that. And the people can't see that, but it's the-federation.info/diaspora or diaspora if you prefer. You know what, Hank? Since you're kind of a relative newbie on Diaspora, you might tell us how. Whoops! Tell me how. I just lost my earphones. How you got started?
Yeah, so as I said, I've been a user of the system since spring. Basically, like all of us, we were kind of gobsmacked by the whole Cambridge Analytica thing. As a developer, that was one of those, like, you kind of expected something like that might be happen, but when it actually hits the wires and it's not just a theoretical thing, it kind of jars you. So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But I love my social media interactions. So then I was like, what am I going to do besides using Facebook? And I was thinking back to the first time I went looking for a Facebook alternative, which was back in 2010 and 2011 when they had those privacy concerns. And back then we had the Google Plus coming out. And I remember the Diaspora project as something that existed. And I wasn't sure if it was still around. So I started Googling around for Diaspora. And sure enough, system's still there, system's still going. So I created an account and away we were.
I muted myself. Let me see if we can hear David. We didn't have a chance to do a sound check. I'm going to unmute you, David. So get ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. Hey, David.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound good.
Hello.
Okay, so David, you started, or you're one of the people who started Pluspora. Let's hear about the origin story there and who else is involved. I know Di was supposed to be here. I don't know what happened. She couldn't make it, I guess.
Yeah, Di and I first started talking about this probably over a year ago because we were concerned about the privacy on Google Plus and the censorship there. So we want to have a little place for a friend to come over and not have to worry about that stuff. So that's how we created Pluspora. And we finally got our act together about a couple months ago to finally put the pod together. And that's when Google announced that they were going to shut their doors on Google Plus. So it kind of like opened the floodgates for us. And we were not expecting that. We were expecting maybe 100 people tops.
100 people. There's over 6,000, I think now. Hey, let's see if we can hear Di. I think she can hear us. Can you?
I can. Am I still muted?
No, you're perfect. We can hear you.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
you presumably heard David's last couple of sentences?
I did not.
Ah, well.
What did David say?
I don't know. I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, you want to hear it anyway.
No, we'll see. What we'll do is we'll do like the police. We'll ask you the same question and compare your answers. No,
Oh no, we're in trouble.
About the origin story, Di. How did you get started?
Oh, what did David say? We've been talking about it. We've been talking. David and I have known each other. What's that? David and I have been talking about
make
this.
sure you get the story straight.
Yeah, we better get this story straight now. Don't tell him like the truth about the time travel and the DeLorean, right, David? So we've been talking about setting up a pod for like a year. We've known each other for like 5 years, David and I. And we had been talking about setting up a pod for something like a year, and we just had never hammered out the details. And then all of a sudden we were like, you know, we really should get this going. All this stuff had been happening on Google Plus, and we just had the idea that mostly our friends were getting kicked off Google Plus, and we needed a place for them to go while they were in timeout there. And we thought, just in case anything ever happens and they decide to close it down. So we got it all up and going. We invited people over, and we were like, oh, this is great. Hey, do you think we'll get to 100 people? Wouldn't that be awesome if we got 100 people over here on the pod? And we literally had like a little party, a celebration when we reached 100 people on the pod, and we were so excited. And then a little while later, they said, "Oh, we're going to close down Google Plus," and kind of all the malarkey started, and it was kind of weird. So that's the origin story.
It is pretty crazy. And what's funny is you said 100 users, and I was I was going to say no. David said 101, but you guys have the same story. So you will not be arrested this evening. Interesting.
Good.
Well, the idea that I think most people had was that you jumped on this immediately after the announcement. In fact, that's not the case, I guess.
No, it was about a month ahead of time that we set, and it was cute. We went on there and we like set everything up. We made all these tips for everybody, and I did some pre-work I did some teaser ads kind of on Twitter and Instagram and things like that for all my friends. And I said, oh, do you guys want to come over? And I kind of like pre-softened everything, but we had no idea that this was going to come and explode and that everybody would be like jumping on the bandwagon. So it was quite a surprise.
Well, I think that and I'll get somebody else to back up what I'm about to say, but the idea of having pods on a federation, I guess with Mastodon, we call them instances, and we run a Mastodon
instances.
We run a Mastodon instance. But anyway, when you have a federated thing, when you have a Facebook or Google or whatever else there is out there, MeWe, it's a centralized thing, and it doesn't matter that they got servers all over the world. There's still the mothership, and there's still a corporation, soulless corporation, usually running it. Whereas the nice thing about federation is the idea of pods, because I compare pods a little bit to states in a federation like the United States, because you might have a pod that's all techies and they hate everybody else. They're all sysadmins and they don't know how to talk to anybody else. Or you might have a pod, you know, the political stuff. I don't mind the political stuff. I just don't want to read it. So I wouldn't want to be on a pod that was full of that stuff. I'm sure there are thousands of photographers pods too, because that's all over the place. But this is what's great. You get yourself associated with the correct pod, and you're good to go, I think. And
Mhm.
I think David wanted to say something. It's the hard part about not having the person in the video is you can't tell because they're not gesturing frantically. But
Yeah.
did you start to say something, David?
No, I didn't. You probably heard my car beep.
Okay, that's
I'm driving right now.
maybe your car wants to say something.
Oh, I thought you were doing
Yes,
the
it
Black
does.
Friday thing, David. I just got back from the Black Friday
Oh, no, I
shopping.
avoided the Black Friday shopping.
Yeah.
You know that's moved. That's all over the world now. It isn't just restricted to the United States. And
I
it's
didn't know
absurd.
that.
Just absurd. We walked by the florist the other day. The florist is advertising Black Friday.
If I can go to the hello, by everyone.
Hello.
By the
Hello.
by the way, if I can go back to the federation structure of Pluspora and Diaspora, it's like going back to the origin of communication between people
Mhm.
with the bulletin board systems that were an entity in themselves, and usually
Yeah.
were people that had a specific interest. Then with the FIDONET,
Mhm.
the BBS bulletin board systems were connected with each other, and then creating that network. We're going back there, as we are going back to the old system of very big centralized server and dumb terminals, like in IBM System 36. History is cyclical, even in IT, apparently.
Yeah, one of the confusing things, the Federation has a pluses and the minuses. So you highlighted one of the pluses. One of the minuses is people expect to go through a common portal. So you log into Facebook or Google or something, even though there's millions of servers. So along the lines of the BBSs, you do have the Federation, and I think one of the best ways to explain it is like an email system. Email is this giant amorphous thing. You have your server, but you're not limited to talking to people on your email server. The email servers know how to talk to one another, and so you get this. The pods can talk, or the instances in Mastodon can talk to each other. So you aren't isolated on an island by yourself like you would be in an old BBS. But you do get some of that sort of isolation in terms of the content and the rules that the administrator will impose on their users.
There's a plus also on the federation approach. It's resilient. We know that Facebook, Twitter, and many others that have a centralized unit, sometimes they pop. They go, it's just one server that is hobbling everything, and all the whole infrastructure practically falls on its knees. So a federation of servers that can hold on the traffic and then pass it on when the other server has come back online is perfectly resilient.
I have a couple of questions, by the way, that I was able to pull like teeth out of people on Pluspora. So they're Pluspora specific questions. At least, no, one of them is anyway. The first one, which is on a lot of people's minds, you creators, co-creators. Gary asked if there are monetary costs with servers and connections. How can we contribute? And that's a good question. Any thought given to that?
That's so sweet. And everybody, it's amazing. Like literally, I think the second day, everybody was like, here, throwing money at us. And we're like, we don't want it. We're good. We never imagined that we would need money, that we would take money from people. It was nothing that we imagined, because we didn't imagine we'd be taking on 7,000 people. And that we would have the cost. When we originally started this, it was like David, what was it, like $25-$30 a month, right?
Yeah, something
He's
like
still there.
that. Wasn't
Yeah,
much.
it was something like that. We were just like, yeah, it's a hobby. Like the idea was for a hobby, right? A server for a hobby. Social media is a hobby. That we didn't need to be millionaires like Mark Zuckerberg, that we could do this for our friends and for ourselves. And the idea is also to foster other people to do it too, that we don't need to take on all of. I think people had the idea, oh, you're going to take all of Google. No, we're not taking all the refugees. We want to teach people how to do this for themselves, for their own interests, as you were saying, Hank, I think that there's other pods, and Randy, that there's other pods and there's other interests, and we don't need to have all the Google people. There could be the photographers, there could be other people have other interests and their communities, the music community and things like that. So we're trying to keep the cost down. So far it's been handleable. One of the reasons, there's a couple of reasons we don't really want to go out for donations is number one, we want to see what the base cost is first because we never imagined the increase. So we're not 100% sure. I think David, we originally had one cost, and then David was really, he's brilliant. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. But he is, and he was able to cut the cost down. So we're now within we're manageable, within what we originally had said. And we also don't want people to feel obligated. We don't want to people feel like this is again another corporation like Facebook or Google that is just out for blood and things like that. We want to be more altruistic. We want people to have a safe place and not feel obligated and feel like they're what's in it, what's going on, what's in it for them, and that whole kind of corporate kind of feeling. We want it to be more altruistic and more like, hey, we're a social, like you get together with your friends at the bar and you're hanging out and everybody buys around. Like, it's more like fun stuff. Like you're treating somebody to a round of beer, not like, we're blood sucking people for money. So
Well, the other
that's kind
problem
of
with
the
accepting
thing.
contributions of any kind, even small donations, is that
Yeah.
suddenly you find yourself in a situation where somebody's, well, yeah, I need this feature. That's obviously a danger. Well, maybe it
That's
wouldn't be if
true.
somebody donates a dollar.
Or favors or political stuff or whatever, we don't want to get anywhere near that. So we're like,
Totally
yeah.
understandable. Totally
Yeah,
understandable.
asking for money and getting money becomes an obligation then. So
Mhm.
it's not that what you want.
There's a couple of related questions. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, okay. I think you said something like right. There's a couple of other two related questions that are general diaspora questions. And one, it's the same person asking, I'll just read the two phrases. Does a person banned on one pod stay banned on all pods? And the second question, can a person banned on one pod come haunting us on other pods? I guess that's a similar question. In other words, what happens if somebody's banned on a pod? I'm going to guess that they're not banned on all pods. I don't know. Is that right?
That's correct. The accounts are all. It's again going back to the email example. It's like you have a bad user on one email system. Their account gets closed. They open it up on another system potentially. The administrators are trying to stay ahead of that to a certain extent. We only have a handful of people that are really kind of like hydras, where a new head pops up every time another one gets cut off. So thankfully that hasn't been a problem in the past. But again, the some of this stuff that Mastodon has done with their whitelisting and things along those lines might be something we'd want to bring into Diaspora, so that pods that have a large percentage of trolls or that sort of thing could not be federated with Diaspora. They already support that as a feature, but what they don't have is Mastodon maintains like a list of those things. It'd be kind of nice for us to have a similar sort of a mechanism.
You can disconnect from a particular pod though, right? Not let them come in. Right?
That's correct.
I had thought briefly, I mean, it's always easy to come up with ideas if you're not the one that's going to have to implement them. But I thought that precisely that the email spam list, the block list, the lookups, would be also another possibility. Maybe that's what Mastodon does. I've never really paid attention because we have such a small instance. By the way, you can run a 100-person Mastodon instance for $5 a month, completely hosted and maintained. In other words, this fellow in Portugal, really nice guy, set it up. He deals with all the updates and everything else. $5 a month. I mean, that's. And I think the next price, maybe for 1,000, is maybe 10. I already asked him about Diaspora, but he's too busy, won't do it. I mean, Mastodon maybe is less intensive. I don't know the inner workings of these things. The other thing isn't a question. It's Chiara who said, "I do love Pluspora. It's better than G+ or any other social."
Chiara's great. She's really active, and she's like, we have now an XMPP chat, so she's one of my chat buddies on our chat. So she's really great.
Tell us about that. I didn't know about it. How do you
Yeah. So
connect it?
David was able to integrate that. We can't integrate it right into the way, you know how they separated out Hangouts from
Mhm.
G Plus. That's how this is. It's separated. So you pick your app that you want to use. It's an XMPP app, and then you just use, for us it's the Pluspora domain, but anybody can use it. And then right, who has it, and then they just log in with their pluspora.com name, and then they can find anybody who's on Pluspora or anyone else that they're linked to on Diaspora, and then they can just chat with them just like Hangouts,
That's very
and it's
cool. I
got
think
everything but video.
I think Mac has a native client that does XMPP, right? In fact, maybe it's the messages thing that you can connect to anything with that, right? Nobody knows. I think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't know about Mac, but XMPP clients are widespread.
Yeah, it's common.
Linux, Windows,
Yeah,
every possible version.
a lot of people have it. A lot of other people who aren't even on social like things can do it through their work or whatever they're however they're getting it. So you can just make an account for it. So it's really useful.
But what's
It's
great,
wider than Hangouts even.
so
You
you're
know that
so you're pre
anyone can do it.
so you're pre-registered if you're on Plus Pro, you just log in?
Hmm. Yep.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
probably the most interesting part. Okay, I mean, XMPP is widespread, and
Yep.
I know I have a client somewhere.
Yep. So
I'll have-
you automatically, with that domain name, as you become an account holder with Plus4, you automatically get the chat integrated with it.
That's
So,
fantastic.
yep.
So I guess one of the other questions that I would ask would be, how do you see this being developed? In other words, currently, I'm guessing that you pulled whatever the code is existing, and
Yeah.
either did a little with it or did nothing with it. I don't know.
We did a little with it. We added emojis, which everybody wanted.
Okay.
And we had some people that were able to do that very quickly. And it was good because it kind of quieted people down. Because we had a bit of an uproar when people first got on. They're like, "Oh, what is this? We don't even have emojis," because they're spoiled. But because a corporation has been handing them everything.
Yeah.
So you get onto, they don't understand. Like, a lot of what we found when people came over is they didn't understand the concept of what's going on here. So it's a lot of volunteers, it's a lot of people putting in their own time and effort. Like, really, you're going back to like grassroots, kind of homegrown stuff. And you have to understand you're gaining a lot with the federation, and you're gaining a lot of with autonomy, but it's also responsibility, right? So, you're not getting everything handed to you, but you're not also handing over everything to somebody,
Mhm.
right? So people have to understand that push and pull, and a lot of them did not. And so one of the things they're asking is like, "Oh, what's going on here? We don't even have emojis." So I was like, "David, can we get emojis?" And he's like, "Yeah, we'll get emojis."
Yeah.
So one of the things we added right away was emojis, and it was really easy, and we were able to do that. And now the chat, and we're just looking to see, what we can do within, the code that's provided. And also the other thing we really want to do is we want to network and integrate with Google Plus. There are so many technology people that, as you know, Randy, that was the home for, like, it seemed like artists and technology people for some reason loved Google Plus. So we have so many coders, and we have such a rich base of people who are willing to put in their time and effort. So we're trying to network these people with the diaspora people and introduce them and get them integrated so they can donate their time and their energy towards improving the code for everybody, and kind of get that moving along and facilitate that. So that's really, it's not so much for our pod as much as it is for everybody, and for the growth of the federation and the community as whole. Like, as far as, look at this rich resource that can come in now, and people that'll be invigorated and interested in growing this platform.
Yeah,
So that's more our vision.
How do you share the code if you change something in the code of your pod? Sharing that to other pods?
That's a good question. What would be the best way to do that? I'm not really sure.
Oh, let me just break in for a second here. There were always emojis. They are just broke on Pluspora. So I just actually worked with some of their devs, and we got them working there. As for updating code, I believe it's all in GitHub. So if you get an account there and start working with the devs, I know they have an IRC channel for that. and they also have Discord. So it's all through GitHub.
Yeah, so I'm a new developer on the project. As I said, I actually started developing quickly after I joined. The first thing I did was I fixed a little hiccup with their Facebook and their Twitter integration, and then in the last couple of months, I've become a very regular contributor, daily contributor. And you're right. So there's the GitHub standard pull request system. The whole software stack is open sourced. The backend is all written in Ruby with database options for MySQL and for Postgres. The front end is JavaScript, obviously. With jQuery, we don't really have a very big framework that is built on top of. So it would be like any other GitHub open source project where you can make some changes, do the pull request, and then that gets integrated in by the core development team.
I have an issue I wanted to bring up, and everybody's welcome to chime in on this, even if you have nothing to do with Diaspora for that matter. But certainly this is my concern. People are talking about censorship. I just saw some posts complaining about various let me back up a second. For example, Facebook has been accused of a very scandalous thing where they allowed a group that's responsible for genocide in Myanmar to operate and just, racial cleansing. And, obviously Facebook, any company can't just look at every single word that's printed and all that. But the point is they're accused of not really doing enough. And, for those people who hold up the flag of free speech, I mean, that's not free speech to me. Now, we all have our opinions, and I don't want to argue with anyone here or ever anywhere, but I just wanted to say I'm bringing it to your camp in that you need to, each admin, each person, each group that runs a pod needs their rules. And I actually accidentally posted something that it was a drawing, but it did have nudity, and I didn't even think of it. And you reminded me that should be NSFW.
The picture came up, yeah, and I said, "Oh, Randy, the picture. You should probably do NSFW on this."
Let me put it this way: it's nothing I haven't seen before, but it was also
it was very mild.
It was a drawing,
still.
But anyway, the point is there's a rule, and that's a rule. Yeah. But if you start talking about, well, we should just lob an atomic bomb over Syria or something like that, that's not free speech to me. And I mean, even if it's a joke, it's probably not a good joke. So the point is each pod has to decide what they want to. And, get everybody, get somebody who says I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, when I first joined and I wanted to start contributing, one of the first concerns I had was, well, I don't want to build a tool that could be directly used by ISIS or an organization like that. Obviously, Linux does. But like actually having infrastructure that's supporting them in that directed way. And they actually, there was an incident in, I think it was 2013 or 14, where ISIS was using Diaspora as a communication mechanism. And that's where, again, they were, accounts were shut down, pods were blacklisted. So when those sorts of things come up, the community responded very fast. And there is a mechanism for doing that. So could there be an ISIS pod that only talks to itself? Sure. But that's no different than Apache or any other isolated system. I agree with you on the censorship thing. One of the nice advantages of pods are there might be a pod for people who don't mind not safe for work content. There may be a pod for people who don't want, who do want to have massive political discussions. And that's part of the diversity of that. They can join those specific pods. And as long as the pod admins are making it clear what content is appropriate and not appropriate, I think that's how we get a little bit of around some of those. People don't want to see these sorts of things, and they don't have to.
Right. There's somebody on the phone. Let's see. Your phone number ends in 7615, and you're unmuted. So who is it? Say hello.
Oh, it's me.
And who's you?
I'm from Wisconsin. I'm Dean from Wisconsin.
From Wisconsin?
Oh.
Hello?
Yes.
Yep. It's Dave from Wisconsin.
Dean.
It's really hard to.
Dean, I think Dean. I think I'm on Wi-Fi and it's going bad. My signal.
Can you get a little closer to the mic? I think that might help too.
No, I'm on Wi-Fi and it's too many people who are using it.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for stopping it. Did you have something you want to say? Maybe we can try to understand it.
No, that's okay. I'll just listen.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, you've got like room noise and so on, but thanks for calling.
Sure.
Go ahead and soft mute him so that the noise doesn't come in. Where were we? Censorship. Yeah. It's a problem today. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
On both sides. Freedom of speech, you know, you do want it, and also, you know, maybe I want to post silly drawings of naked ladies. That wasn't the point, but it was an illustration.
How do we deal
Anyway,
with that, though, Randy? Do we have something that is suitable for federation, so can be sent out to the federation? Is something that should be left inside the pod? Do we mark posts as NSWF, and that, or how can we have levels of, okay, that should go to that group of pods because they have the same interest or the same level of tolerance, and the others don't? Is that something that we should think about?
it's an interesting idea.
I think the problem with that is coming up with a categorization scheme that actually works, because people have been trying to do that for years, and I don't think anyone's actually come up with a system that necessarily works. And it also doesn't stop people from abusing it by, you know, if you've got a way of categorizing them, then if people self-categorize, then they'll deliberately, bad actors will deliberately categorize things incorrectly to amplify their messages. And if you don't self-categorize, then you've got to have a way of categorizing it through the community, which is difficult. And you know, so you know, it's a nice idea, but I think the practicalities of it mean that it would be very, very difficult to do in a meaningful way.
Yeah, difficult, like managing Wikipedia pages and so on. Yeah, with contributors or people that are editing things. I wouldn't let anyone self-categorize the content of their post, but probably now Andy and Randy would hate me, but use artificial intelligence for that, or machine learning, to see if we can at least broadly decide if something is suitable to be federated with everyone or not. I'm thinking aloud here.
If anyone that can hear my voice now or later has a chance to see the Crackle TV network, you have to watch a show called Startup, or go look it up in IMDb. Startup, that's the name of it. And it's about a young woman who starts a network that's totally encrypted. It's kind of a dark web type deal. And it goes on from there. I'm not going to go into it at length, but it actually, what made me think of it with Corrado's idea is that at one point there was a problem, and over in someplace in the Middle East, soldiers dug up of the fact that they were someone over there was using the network to make purchases of weapons. And one of the suggestions within the network, because they said, well, we can't cooperate with the NSA and all that. And then on the other side, one of the suggestions was to use a machine learning search, keyword search, because after all, it's encrypted. But then, well, this is a TV show, so they didn't go to the fact that if it's really encrypted, the people who are running it don't know either. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, the point is, very interesting idea. A lot of the ideas in that show, it's really a good show, and I recommend it highly. Startup. Go take a look on IMDb. It's on Crackle, which is a Sony network. You could probably get it somehow over in the States.
So,
go ahead.
A couple of things on the NSFW stuff. So we already have that coarse grain filtering capability. So, and that is a self posting. If people are being good actors, then they can mark their posts as defaulting to NSFW. So they don't have to do that every time they make a post, but you can just mark that with the flag, and it keeps track of that. And you can say you don't want NSFW posts on your pods. Part of the isolation you're talking about is also a feature of the federation aspect. So when you think about the pods, these are not all on all type of things. So if I post something on my pod, it doesn't automatically get broadcast to every pod in the federation. it only gets broadcast to pods that have users that are following me, and then I'm broadcasting to. So if there is so if someone on another pod wants to see my content, and they don't mind it being a specific, like again, NSFW, let's say, the only way that's actually going to get on the other pod is if someone's following me. It's so you don't have that problem to a certain extent, except for as you're broadcasting as a public poster within your own pod.
I mean, I think in general, these things work in communities because the majority of people are good actors. But the problem is it's when you get the bad actors that come in and deliberately game the system or tweak the system or whatever to spammers or whatever, could be all kinds of stuff. So the main thing is obviously you have controls to allow you to identify and I guess block or whatever those sort of people.
Are we going down the reputation route like Web of Trust was doing? So a reputation of a person, if it gets blocked too many times or their posts are tagged with or reported or something.
I'm not convinced that works either. I mean, the two sort of thoughts I had on that. One is that a lot of the bad actors don't cling on to an account. They're quite happy to push up new accounts to cause trouble wherever. And the second one is that I've been involved in some Web of Trust stuff with a game that I'm involved in, and it works if everyone follows the rules, but people get lazy and don't follow the rules. So you end up with people accepting or allowing others to join the Web of Trust without actually auditing properly. And so that undermines the Web of Trust's value.
Yeah. So we need a third actor, probably an impartial third actor, and again we're looking at a machine deciding if.
One of the things I've been doing is when we came in, there was a lot of people. I shouldn't say that. There was a percentage of people that were very nervous about all of the refugees coming in from Google Plus, and I wouldn't say we were attacked, but there was some bad actors that came in. So instead of blocking them and just being like, okay, we're done with you guys, you can't come on our pod and this and that, I actually I found them, I found their posts, and I posted on their posts and opened a dialogue with them and started talking to them. And reached out to them and said, what are your concerns? Talk to me. And at first they were like, whoa, wait a minute. What are you doing here? Like, we're not talking to you. You're the enemy. But then I'm like, seriously, like, talk to me. And so they told me what their concerns were. And I have to say, they were valid. They had valid concerns. And I addressed all of their issues. I went back to the people that were on my pod that they're having issues with. I talked to them. And I actually mediated, which is something you can't do with machines and AI, and if you're going to block people. So I went and I actually mediated a lot of peacemaking between these people on the pods and some of the issues that were going up. And I've struck a peace with these other people and other pods that have very widely different viewpoints from the majority of people on my pod. So so far that's held. There's only one person who's really, because like you said, if I block them, they're just going to come and, and make new accounts. Like one guy came and made an account on my pod, like just, as a, oh, now I'm on your pod. Well, now what are you going to do to me? So like, there's the best way that I found was to just go and approach them and be like, hey, what's the problem? What's up? Talk to me. What can we do for you? What can you do for us? Like, where is the issue? Where are we going? How are we going to live with each other here? Because we're here, and you have to deal with us. And so far, it's worked pretty good. That's just what we've been doing.
I think it's also a question of culture. This is a startup poster you could admire while I'm talking. It looks better than I do. A question of culture, I think, Di, and I'm really trying hard. A couple of comments I've gotten. When you post something, you take the time to post it, and you bother to write something out, and that can be laborious, especially on a phone. But the point is that you made a statement, and unless it's something provocative, when people come with idiotic comments, I every time I wonder, well, should I delete that or not? And sometimes I do a little later, a couple days later, so that we don't have to get into a discussion. But the main thing is, I myself, I think that when I talk about culture, what I mean is that if everyone has the mindset that, hey, I'm not here to waste anybody's time, and certainly not my own. So I'm not going to be confrontational with people. This whole someone's wrong on the internet thing has always been out of hand. You know, it's just ridiculous. And I posted something today and I mentioned an example. For example, if I say Diaspora started in 1940 and it was blah, 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 and I'm going on, you know, and Hank could come in and say politely, buddy, dude, not quite, you know. But when people come in, you can tell, you know, first of all, it's hard to tell tone from writing because it's terse, especially if they're on the phone and it's all the typos and autocorrects. But really, if we thought a little bit about what we're writing, and I try to, I think that gives a character to the pod. And right now, we're really lucky with Pluspora because the pod is a very friendly place. The things I see that I don't like aren't because somebody doesn't have the right to post them or that they're unfriendly. It's just that I'm not interested. Mostly political stuff. I would like to never see political stuff on my screen because if I wanted to know, I have the Guardian, I can go look. And I don't look at that much anymore either, judging because of what's on the front page. Anyway, I think you see where I'm coming from. And I think we're really lucky right now because it isn't 100 people. It's 3,500 a month, apparently, something like that, active. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And it's interesting. And it's in 3 languages that I've seen, or 4, maybe. So very cool.
Yeah. One of the things I would also
the languages is. I was just going to say about the languages. It's crazy because we get the reports and they're in a different language. I got to go back to Google Translate to just deal with like the reported stuff. It's that was something I never anticipated. So that was a shock. Yeah.
By the way, excuse me, Hank, but very before you start, another interesting thing that Mastodon did is they have a language filter. So you can eliminate languages you don't, I think that's the way it works. Either that or you just select what language you want. You can filter out because Mastodon got to the point, the Japanese love Mastodon apparently. So they have huge channels of it. And when they were on, say, Mastodon Social, which is the biggie, it's the equivalent, I guess, of diaspora.org. You know, you get all kinds of languages that you can't read. So it became necessary. That's kind of solved by the pod thing at the same time, I guess, because for the moment, I haven't. There's a few German, because there's Germans, so there's going to be some German, and there's a bunch of French people from Framisphere, I think it's called. So you know that's fine, and that's not a problem. And I speak French and translated something for somebody today. Anyway, who did I interrupt? Hank.
Well, I was just getting started. So actually, it's related to that comment, which is it goes back to the Diaspora does not have an algorithm that's deciding what gets put on your screen in your stream. It is a very predictive thing, which is what tags are you following, what people are you following, or who are you associated with, and then it's just feeding up all of that information to you. So tailoring your experience in terms of what you want to see or don't see is driven by what tags you follow and who you follow. The language thing actually came up. A friend of mine hadn't followed. I brought him in. He started using it, but he hadn't followed a lot of people. And so next thing you know, he's like, I can't use Diaspora because 90% of the posts are in French and German. I'm like, that's odd. I don't have that problem. So it's like going back to explaining, there is no master algorithm that's trying to optimize trying to figure out what you want to see. You're very much driving that. And so you have some responsibility for that. There have been some discussions on adding the language filtering to Diaspora. They unfortunately haven't gone into an implementation. There are complications on how to do that. And it is something which probably would be very helpful to users if that was added. Along with, I would like to see comment moderation. We can delete comments, but I like the idea of being able to lock down comments when they get out of hand. I've always wanted that on Facebook, etc., and I actually can make the change on this because it's open source, so that's always good.
All right. Who else got a comment?
The other thing that everyone really wants is a complete block. That is the number one thing that, just saying, that's what everyone is asking for, just because of the differences. You know, there's some. I mean, me personally, I don't block. Hardly ever, but some people just They want to live and just have their stream and not be bothered. And I get that 100%. People have their different privacy needs, and tell them to post private, but they want to post public. They have their different boundaries. They want a complete block where they can post public and not have that person reshare their post, and not have that person see their posts, and not have that person on their posts. So,
and comments. Yeah, that was one of the first things
yeah.
I asked for when I joined, and I've been involved in lots of there's lots of nuances to the behavior. What happens if there's a comment that got posted for someone you blocked? How does that get manifested? You know, there's the fallacy of, well, if they're logged in, they can't see your post. If they're not logged in, they can, because the blocking mechanism isn't there. And again, it's like that happens on other systems as well, but they haven't. It is something that's being discussed, but it's not at the point where that would be implemented yet. But I would like to see that as well.
I think a question that a lot of people have also, including myself, is with the relation between tags and blocking, or the what's called ignore, for that matter. Is ignore block? Is that no?
That's what I was going to suggest. If you don't want to hear from someone, just ignore the name, so the post doesn't come up in your feed.
But does
that as a filter?
Right, but somebody asked if that overrides tag. In other words, if you don't like somebody and they tag a thing cooking, are you going to see that post or not?
No.
I don't know, but I know that someone got upset and left because they had a post and somehow someone they ignored reshared it. And
yeah, there's a difference between ignoring and blocking.
Upset. Yeah,
isn't
and
there?
they got very upset and he left.
Because ignoring is you don't want to see their content, but blocking surely is the other way around. You're saying I don't want them to see my content.
And ironically, in the user interface, it's an ignore button. In the backend code, it's all blocks. It's called blocking.
Yeah. No,
so I think the behavior changed some point in ancient history. Yeah. And that is one of the things. At the very least, we can make some of those sorts of changes. Ignoring is they don't show up on your feed. There's a little bit more to it than that. But as you said, if you make a public post and someone actively searches it out, they will find it and they can reshare that. And that I understand how jarring that could be.
The other thing that I'm not clear on, and I think would be a useful facility if it's not there, is the ability to follow somebody but then not follow parts of their content. And this I thought was a very powerful feature of Google Plus was the collections, because you could actually, I mean, it was self-policing, but as I say, most people really are good actors. And if you're following someone and they're posting, I don't know, a lot of pictures of their cats or whatever, and you're not interested in seeing it, or you got some maniac who's posting pictures of stains, then and you don't want to see them, then you can just say, I want to unsubscribe from that.
There were people watching those things.
I know. But I thought that was a great feature on Google Plus. That was, to me, that was one of the best features they ever introduced. And
yeah, and that's why they immediately killed it. Not immediately, but
I know.
Long ago.
But it's still there. They just don't push it. But
they removed it from the menu. That's like, burying it, basically.
Yeah. And, it would be good to have something like that on other platforms. So you could actually say, I want to follow Randy, but I'm not interested in his dungeon porn posts.
No, I agree 100%. I was huge on collections. I even did I did a sort of one of their things, the Google people, on collections.
Yeah.
And I had, as I'm sure you know, Keith, I had a collection with 450,000 people following it.
Yeah.
Which I deleted when they took it off the menu, because I thought they were being, how can I say, kind of disingenuous. Google, this is what they do. They make you do a lot of work. There were thousands and they go, that feature's not, who cares? So that's why I'm actually leaving. I'm not making a big deal. I'm leaving Facebook, but it's over. It's, if they've announced it's going to end and people are crying and they're saying, what they should do is just leave everything up, or maybe they'll change their minds. I mean, you know what? At this point, personally, if they change their mind, it's not going to change anything. I'm deleting my profile in the next couple of days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't see any use for it anymore. It's just something that has to be maintained.
I got you, so I don't care.
Well, I do still see use for it, because I look at it and say the value of anything I post is fleeting. So I know you kind of look at it as investing in the platform, but it's like, I'm not investing anything, because I think there's two kind of possibly more, but there's two kind of ways of using social media. And one is the kind of broadcasting kind of thing where you're kind of look at me and pushing things out. And that's fine. That's very much a Twitter particularly kind of view. And then there's the kind of interactive stuff where you might post to a community or a group of people that and that's definitely not Twitter, because pretty much everything you do on Twitter is public. To a certain extent, it's never been Facebook as well, because although you do have groups, people don't use them nearly as much as they used to. And I think the strength that, it's a shame in a way that Google Plus is going, because the strength that it had was it had very, very strong communities and similar things. And one of the stats I heard a few years ago, and it certainly reflects on my behavior, it was something like 90% of the activity on Google Plus happens in private, either private circles or private communities. So, and that's kind of where and so once and a lot of that stuff, in my view, has now moved to chat applications.
Yeah.
A quick interjection on the community thing is that in communities, you had a choice to look at chronological order, because a big complaint in Google Plus, and certainly Facebook is really bad at this. You get to see what they want you to see.
Yeah.
Whereas, and that's true of the Google Stream too. I've seen it over and over again. So I'm going to assume that Diaspora, doesn't manipulate that. You're seeing the stuff as it's posted. It might be a different couple of seconds. Maybe if we both press the button, your post goes before mine.
Well, I think Hank said it does exactly that. It's not manipulated. It's
yeah.
So and I think that, but the whole concept of, to me, I'm actually moving away from social media. I closed down my Facebook account a few years ago. To be honest, Google Plus is the only social media I used, and I didn't use it in the same way as I've got a Twitter account. I don't use it. I don't know anybody that uses Twitter. I know a few people who've got Twitter accounts. I don't know anyone who uses them. And I'm just kind of stepping away from that public side of it, because I just found it a waste of time. That's fine. That's just me. I don't have anything to promote. I don't have any desire to kind of tell people what I'm up to all the time. I know my friends and family aren't on the social media that I use, so I have no requirement to talk to them. It's communities of interest, and I can do that on a web forum as much as I can on social media. So I'm kind of stepping away from that, and that means that most of the things I kind of do now are either chat or web forums.
Couldn't agree more. I've mentioned several times to people too that probably the best experience you're going to have is on a topic-oriented web forum. Right now, I'm on a saxophone thing, and frankly, and I think this will please everybody, it's a lot like Pluspora, because right now, in the phase we're in right now, everybody's trying to discover each other, and there's a lot of joking around, and it's very, very lightweight, very nice. And my wish is that it stays that way. And hopefully it can, honestly, I think, if everybody keeps that culture thing that I'm talking about, which is what, be excellent to each other. That thing that I guess that comes from you, or maybe it's Diaspora in general. Who put that on there? Is that you, Di? You guys?
Yeah, that was us.
That's perfect. That's exactly what has to happen, is that people have to respect each other and be cool about it. And you were going to say something. I saw you unmute before.
Oh, I was just agreeing with what you said about kind of the social media. And it's funny, my purpose for social media is to be social. So I don't really care about the media part of it as much, like what media I'm using. And so I've like expanded my network of friends. So I've made real life friends from my social media. So I'm going out tonight to New York City to do what we call a hurl. You guys know, right, from Google Plus.
Hang on in
To
real
do a
life.
hurl with, hang out in real life with a bunch of friends that I made through Google Plus. So that's, for me, the social media is not as much posting and the broadcasting stuff as it is to find really cool people like Randy, who have like really cool hobbies and do cool things that I don't know anything about, and just expand my friendship circle. So that's why I like to use it.
I absolutely agree with that.
Up a post. It's not to put up a post that's going to last forever.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And that's one of the things that I hated about Facebook. I never heard of anybody doing that through Facebook and Twitter or Tumblr or any of those things. But G+, for some reason, it kind of stimulated that. And, I said I'm stepping back. To be honest, I've got a Pluspora account. I've got a Mastodon account. So I've got a MeWe account. I'm finding all of them, they're interesting. They kind of do what they do, but I'm probably not going to use them because I'm just kind of stepping away from that, and I just don't have time for it. I've got enough going on in my life now with friends I've made from G+, friends I've made from Meet Me, you know, other places, sorry, Meetup, all these other things going on that I just don't need. But you know, that's me. Other people can do it, and I'm kind of really glad that people like you are actually putting this stuff together. And I'm hoping, and the impression I get from these tools is that they're much more. I'm trying to think of the right word. They're much better for the soul than Facebook, because Facebook. I mean, we've had this conversation with Randy. Facebook, in particular, I think to a degree, all social media. Tumblr is actually dreadful, but I think it's bad for people's mental health. And
in Instagram as well. It's been widely studied that mental health is disintegrating to a large extent because of these lifestyle things. And you know, people don't realize that a lot of the stars on Facebook, on Instagram, which is a Facebook property anyway, are being paid tremendous sums of money to go, oh yeah, here's my new shoes and all that. I mean, it's just such a false. You know, I just heard an author say, this is perfect too. You know how junk food is everywhere. You used to not be able to get, there wasn't before in France, you go to a supermarket, there wasn't an entire row, an entire aisle of potato chips. Well, now there is. We have just like the States, Doritos, 16 flavors of Doritos and so on. And what he said is, we've also created a junk life, a junk culture. This online thing is exactly like those big aisles of potato chips in the supermarket. So, you know, you can go and pick the good potato chips, I guess, or turn around and get the healthier rice cakes, which I have over here. But the point is, you know, you have to do that on social media, which means you have to avoid all these confrontations and take the good. And I have a couple of lifelong good friends that I met. Of course, the first one was CompuServe, which was a little like Pluspora. Because it's way back, but it still was a silo. Anyway, David's still here, and he may have gotten where he's going, or he's on the freeway and can talk because he's still unmuted. David, you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
I'd hate to think it was that you're not, and your phone is still on. Anything to add?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Well, not really.
Well, in that case, thanks for joining us. We just need to get out anything that hasn't been said from anybody, because
I think if I can make a comparison between Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus, is probably the type of audience they attract is related to the type of structure that is put on that social media, whereas Facebook and Twitter are not structured at all, where Google Plus is and was and is still a little more structured in the way of the circles, collections, and many other things that have guided people that have joined Google Plus to be in not silos, but in some sort of container that could express who they were and join with the people that they wanted to join, whereas Facebook and Twitter are complete mayhem with everything deregulated.
Well, there are Facebook groups, in all fairness, right?
Yes, but again, how you join with people on Facebook is not, it is very organic in a way, but it is not corralled. You're not guided by existing structures. And that probably attracts different people. That's why probably people on Google Plus, we like Google Plus and we don't like Facebook. It's a thing that is between us because we have a shared vision of things, whereas other people that are attracted to Facebook have a different way of life, a different way of living, and that's horses for courses, probably.
That might be why when you go to a shopping center, it doesn't say follow us on Google Plus, but it does say follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, even the Rapid Transit Authority in every city I've ever been to in the world has that.
Funnily enough, I did start seeing about 2-3 years ago, I did start seeing follow us on Google Plus on various things.
it's there, but it's extremely rare. I don't know about the supermarket either.
The biggest issue with that is that in order to be successful on Google Plus, what they didn't realize is you have to actually engage with people and go out low. So my rule was always 80% more posting on other people's posts, commenting on other people's posts than posting. And so when you are new, you're a transit or you're a store, you're not out commenting on other people's posts, getting to know them. You're just broadcasting. Broadcasting's great on Facebook. It's great on Twitter. It's not so great on Google Plus, and it never was. It's
Exactly.
like you said, like Corrado said, like how you find people is through interaction. And that's what made us so tight and kept us such a great community. But in the end, I think it might have been also our undoing in some ways, you know, because we all went private and we all did chats and we all stuck together, and
I think
and they never saw the value in it.
Yeah,
No,
I think the problem with Google was they couldn't monetize it. That's all.
Well, I think
exactly.
I think but I think you're right. The thing that made G Plus seem like a ghost town was the fact that it had so many controls. And so people said from the offing, "Oh, it's quiet. It's a ghost town. It's not successful." Even at a point when it was very successful, even at a point where it was like number two or three social network in the world, because it still felt quiet if you just opened an account and just sat there going. And especially from the people who'd been, using Facebook for 3 or 4 years and had got a lot of stuff on their stream. So, it kind of encouraged its own failure by being good.
That's why the people that have tried to, and successfully, sadly, influence people politically have targeted Facebook and not Google Plus. That's why. That's one of the weaknesses. Not a structured, not a self-regulating system that has caused a lot of mayhem.
And to be fair, G Plus didn't really, although they had a bit of an API, they didn't really give you an API that let you search the social graph in the same way as they do with Facebook, or to let you automatically post.
No, but that didn't stop them from suggesting friends who were either dead or not even, they had profiles that were auto-created and they were not actually active. I mean, if I go on Google Plus right now, there's 3 names that I should connect with. And I know one of them I barely know, and I don't know, maybe that person's on, but the other 2 I know for a fact have never posted anything. You go to look at the profile, you can see if they're active. They're not in any they're not in any communities.
Well, that's just a poor discovery algorithm. That's basically saying, well, we know that he knows him and he knows that other person, so we're assuming they all know each other.
Because look, that's an interesting point about Google. Google, if you have Gmail, they know every one of your contacts, whereas Facebook, you have to upload them. LinkedIn, the day I accidentally clicked, that thing comes up on LinkedIn all the time. I finally accidentally, they got me. I uploaded all, and that day I quit LinkedIn. I couldn't stand it. It drove me nuts, because then they're going to start with, well, so-and-so, hey, I know them and I don't want to connect or something.
Facebook are even worse than that. If you've got the Facebook app on your phone and you walk into the same pub as someone else who's got the Facebook app on the phone at the same time, and you do that more than once or twice, then they'll assume that you're friends, even though you may never have met each other. You may just happen to be in the pub at the same time.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's interesting we bring that up, because we talk about community and different concepts coming in. One of the things that comes up periodically when we have people who join new and they're like, oh, I want all my friends to join Diaspora too. You know what you could do? You could have a feature that uploads my address book or something like that. And that always meets with resistance, because we've all been bitten by I didn't mean to hit the yes button and now the damage is done. So those sorts of, unfortunately, that does help. That does cause some problem with when you bring someone in. Discovery, user discovery is not like on the other systems, but that's actually a bit of a feature so that we don't have these auto connecting graphs and that sort of thing.
Well, you're not in there to try and get as many people onto your social network as possible. You're in there. You're building it for more personal reasons, I guess, which is good, because it means that you're not trying to spam everyone and get more people.
But you can invite them anyway. If you have friends, you can invite them.
Yeah. I mean, people can be invited. If you want them on there, you can invite them. So there's still mechanisms, but you're not trying to compete in the who's got the biggest audience,
or even who's got the biggest pod.
No.
Right.
I
No, I
really
mean,
like the new here posts because then the
Yeah.
first couple weeks when everyone was joining, I was resharing everyone's new here posts, and that was a really great way to introduce everybody or help people find each other. And then they all made up hashtags of the G plus refugee, which they made up, and then that was a great way for them to find each other. So, but the new here posts are a really great idea as far as populating the stream and finding people and welcoming people, and I really love that because I love that personal touch of the idea of a personal touch when you come onto a network and then all of a sudden you can like immediately find people.
It's also a measure of the friendliness. I think that's very interesting. There was never anything on the big networks for obvious reasons. They're too big. By the way, with regard to Keith's community thing, interesting thing that just happened, a post popped up tagged retro computing. And I've been involved in a couple of those because I have a couple of magazines from the 80s. And, you know, the ad for the, wait for it, 20 megabyte drive for $3,500. Yes, I'll get on that right away. Somebody just posted this thing, and I can't show it because it's on a different computer, but it's a USB connected with an old, I don't even know what this is, but retro computing is a thing. So that could be like a collection. If I follow that tag, and I may just be following it, I'm not even sure, but if I was, I'd be seeing all those posts from anybody. So it's not the same as collections because it's anybody who posts under that tag, which brings us to the other problem, which is how good are people about their tags. But if they're doing a good job, you know, the better job they do, the more discovery there is. So that's a whole other fascinating topic in itself. We should probably have this conference every week. Actually, we do, but it's not always on Diaspora. Anything that's been unsaid, David or Di or Hank or any of the core regulars? We need to say anything besides pluspora.com is one way. There's a pod list somewhere, by the way, right?
There is udupty.com. Am I saying it right? UDP. Is that right? David, are you still there? Maybe Hank knows it.
What's
I
that?
think, of course, you could look up
the pod list. Is it udupty?
DuckDuckGo.
UDP.
Remember.
PTI.com. I think it's udupty. I think that's how you'd say it.
I think it's PODUPTI.me, I think.
Yeah.
Speaking of discovery, I mean, you would never guess that, would you?
I know.
Probably
but
better
it's...
to Google Diaspora list of FODs or DuckDuckGo if you don't want to use Google.
But something like Podupty or something like that. And and it's a whole list of all the pods, and you can find out what they, in case you don't want to join Pluspora, you can join any of the existing pods if they make sense for whatever your interests are. And get to know their podmins and find out if some of them you have to get accepted to, and some of them are public. The big ones public, but the other ones you have to get accepted to.
Yeah, I think if you go to Join Diaspora, there's a link directly off that page to help you kind of pick your pod direct versus going to that site directly, although you can go there directly. And yeah, there are some large pods. There are a lot of good smaller pods as well. We obviously like to have some aggregation. We can't have we could have everyone making their own pod, but that's not realistic. But we also don't want pods with 10 or 100 million users either.
Yeah, it needs to make sense.
But it's good.
I got the URL is podupti.me.
That's it. Yep. Pod up me. Pod up to me. I don't know. Maybe it's time. Pod up time. Oh.
Yep.
The dot threw me off. Okay. Yeah, and that has the big list of everything. And so, so some of them are real big and some of them are smaller. And then we opened a community that was a pod incubator if there was anybody on Google Plus who wanted to learn how to open their own pod. So we're teaching people how to do it. So David and I are kind of helping people. So we had, how many people we have in that community now? Like 35, 40 people, David?
Randy, put the list by number of users. Click on the users column, and you see Pluspora has 7,000 people and has a rating of 10. 10 out of 10.
Look at that. How about that?
Yeah. So not so bad for people who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Diaspora.org is the old. You know what though? Diaspora.org. I just looked at their figures. I guess this is probably live or close to it, huh? So that number, I don't know, that's users that must be in registered. People who are registered. No, it's got to be more.
Yeah, that's the registered users. Most of them have the although I'm not sure where the column is, the monthly active users, which is obviously a bit more important. Diaspora.org is actually the pod I ended up joining when I first came on.
Me too.
Yeah. That's awesome. You guys are doing helping out with the hosting aspect, because I know that the setting up the server guide can be a little bit dense. And one of the concerns I have whenever I have the idea of starting my own pod, especially once the account migration feature is completed, is how do I make sure the pod is properly secured and staying updated and is hack proof and that sort of thing. And the guide has some of that, but if there's an active community around that, especially for new hosters, that's awesome. You guys are doing that. You guys have done a really good job with also invigorating the community. So
thank you. That was our goal, was kind of just to integrate. And I give a lot of that credit, that part of the credit, to David. So he's kind of the code wizard part of it. And I'm more the get everybody together, integrated, watch the posting part of it. So it's good. It's good we have two of us. So we have different strengths, and we play off each other.
Well, this has been great. As long as we haven't forgotten anything, all these great minds.
Oh, we forgot one thing, Randy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Our pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
This has been the VUC. Well, I'll be in touch with all you guys. And by the way, this will be, we go into what we call the mature audiences only. There's nothing ominous about it, except that it does go private. So you're welcome to stick around for a couple of minutes after that. But this is going to be the stop. So I have to queue up the out video, and here it is.